Where does the black community stand on gun ownership? The answer might actually surprise you. Tide has been shifting, and there's been a growing movement of pro-gun people within the black community. Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Just recently, Revolt TV had two separate panels, black pro-gun advocates and black anti-gun advocates. I really would have wished that they would have had them in the same panel so they could test their ideas against one another. But I'm happy just to see them giving some airtime to black pro-gun advocates. First and foremost, of course, I believe gun ownership is essential to protecting and growing and strengthening the black community. Outsourcing your security is a ridiculous idea, especially if you're dealing with a society that, like this one. If systemic racism is actually a thing, how can it make sense to voluntarily disarm yourselves? So the panel consisted of, on the pro-gun side, Toure and Geneva Solomon. On the anti-gun side, Toure and Danielle Moodie. The things that Maj was talking about, of course, he's talking about how the racist roots of gun control. And it's obvious from the fact that gun laws have constantly been enacted to stop black people from owning guns, from being able to defend themselves, because racist white people were afraid of allowing black people to have guns. It's interesting that they're talking about, you have Barack and Joe Biden talking about the Jim Crow, the relic of a Jim Crow era with regards to the filibuster, but they don't want to talk about the racist roots of gun control because it fits the party narrative. It toes the party line. But also Geneva Moodie was talking about how, hey, gun safety doesn't mean not owning a gun. It means education, means being knowledgeable and having a discussion. Like if a gun owner has kids, having discussions with his kids, and of course you gotta store your weapon safely. But these are things, education is key to being safe. I do want to focus a lot on, in fact, I left a link in the description so you can check out the interview in full. It is it's a very good segment, and no matter what side of the aisle you fall on, I think you should watch it so you get to see the opposite side's opinion, and you can share your opinions. Because what's really interesting, and so it's interesting that they got to put their entire cases forward. So now, if you disagree with that, you can interject. Okay, this is how I feel. This is what I don't think they took into consideration. And if you are somebody who feels that, oh no, gun control should be enacted, that we need more gun laws, I'm curious as to what you thought of Maj Toure, of his arguments, of what do you think about the fact that gun control has racist roots? What do you think about the fact that, just take a look at the Black Panthers. Black Panthers were exercising their Second Amendment rights, and the scumbag that is Ronald Reagan decides, oh, we're going to have to pass a new law to stop them from open carrying weapons. Like, what does that? So if you disagree with people like Ronald Reagan, why are you agreeing with him that black people shouldn't be able to arm and protect themselves? That's my question for you. Also, just like one of the things Maj also talked about was black people being locked up for gun possession. Like, if you're opposed to mass incarceration, you know who's being targeted by these gun laws? So the feds will say, oh yes, we need to enact a new law. And I remember the advertising campaign in the 90s when they were saying, 5-year mandatory minimum for gun possession. And when I actually went to federal prison, I was surrounded by dudes who were there for gun possession. It's like, it was crazy. And so I remember seeing on the outside this ad campaign, and then when I got in and I saw who were the targets, who were the victims of that legislation. But gun control advocates don't want to talk about that, and I never hear them bringing that up and acknowledging that. And if they did, what would they say? Something like, oh, well, we just have to make sure that the laws are more evenly applied, which in itself is ridiculous. The fact is, as Maj talked about, why should people be going to jail for just possession? Not robbing anybody, not shooting anybody, not murdering anybody, just owning a gun and being able... Second Amendment exists. So you should be able to own a firearm and be able to protect yourself. That's what it is. And I really like those points. I am interested to hear what people who are opposed to gun ownership think. But let's turn to the gun control advocates. There's some questions that I have for gun control advocates. 1. Who will be targeted by new gun legislation? 2. How will black people protect themselves without guns? And 3. Can the same police departments now under fire for extrajudicial killings be trusted to protect us? So, of the 3 questions that I have for them, let's talk about what they actually talked about. What they did talk about was, first, the interesting thing that Toure, not Maj Toure, Toure, the anti-gun advocate, despite this caveat that he offers, I am going to call him an anti-gun advocate. He says, oh, I wouldn't say I'm anti-gun, I would say I'm pro-gun safety. Now, that's like saying, I'm not anti-car, I'm pro-car safety, but I don't want anybody to own a car. Like, no, then you're anti-car. Because if you're pro-car safety, you say, okay, I want people to have cars, but here's how you keep them safe. Because that's what Maj and Geneva are. They're pro-gun safety. Like, Geneva went into breaking down some of the things that people need to do to make sure that their gun ownership is responsible and safe. But if you're actually advocating for people not to own the guns, because then he starts talking about how, well, AR-15s and machine guns never kept anybody safe. And like, number one, machine guns, you know, fully automatic, that's a separate, completely separate conversation. AR-15s, which are semi-automatic, the ones that are being sold, that's a lie. That's an absolute bald-faced lie. Absolute. AR-15s have saved lives, and there are people that there's stories of people who have defended their home from home invasions, from robbers, and like there's one story that recently came into my mind, a home invasion, attempted home invasion, and the homeowner had a AR-15, and I think he shot and killed both of the intruders, but he was safe. His family was safe. So this nonsense that that AR-15s don't protect anybody, it's just a lie. It's just a flat out lie. There is not an ounce of truth to it or validity to that argument, because it's a lie. It is a lie. And that's why I think it would have been interesting to have, and I think maybe they realized that, maybe there's a reason why they didn't have them interact, and maybe they did have them interact and just didn't air that because of how poorly it went for the anti-gun people. That is a possibility. I don't know. I don't know that. I haven't seen Maj say anything about that, but I would not be surprised. I've seen things like that happen. But then Danielle Moodie starts talking about Columbine and how things should have been changed, and she glosses over the fact that there was an assault weapons ban in place when Columbine happened. She then talks about how, Newtown and Parkland is what made her realize that the gun debate was over because they allow children to get murdered. I'm like, wait. Like, I don't think they were, because in Newtown, the guy is dead. In Parkland, in fact, the guy might be dead both, but like there was never any, oh, we're not going to charge him. We're going to let these people survive, live through this thing, and we're not going to charge them. We're just going to let them go because we're cool with it. No, I mean, that's, once again, it's, so when I'm seeing this disingenuousness from the pro-gun, like that speaks to the lack of validity to your position. When you have to lie, and you're lying about the facts of what's happening. You're lying about the truth of your position, because like Toure was talking about, oh no, I don't want to I don't want to call myself anti-gun. I just want to call myself pro-gun safety, because it will put me on the defensive, and then people say, oh, you just want to take our guns. And then he later on goes to talk about how, well, I don't actually, I may not say it out loud in public, but I don't think that people should own any guns. Like, so yes, so when people say you just want to take our guns, it's true, but these anti-gun advocates will lie, and it's clear what they're doing. They're lying, and and this belief that only the government agents should own guns. Like, what does when a person become a government agent, a police officer, a law enforcement, do they suddenly become like gain these powers that make them unable to do wrong? Clearly not, because like right now you've got a cop on trial for killing George Floyd. That's just one incident. There's so many other incidents of cops killing, not maybe unarmed people, maybe armed people, maybe not even killing, maybe just engaging in police brutality, beating people up, hiding evidence, fabricating evidence, committing crimes against people, rape, sexual, like all kinds of crimes that law enforcement, these people that you think are the only people that should own guns, are committing crimes, are just as, if not more, flawed and damaged as everybody else. So what makes them so special? Does the putting on of a uniform suddenly make them morally virtuous? It's absurd. There's no logic to it at all. But this belief, it's this fantasy that, oh, if the government does it, it's right. The government will save us. So this is what public education has done. It's created this image in people who've allowed themselves to be, and I'm not going to say allowed, but who have been brainwashed by this education, and which is just another reason why public education is horrible. But this has created this idea in people that if the government is doing it, if that somebody is working for the government, somehow they're good. Despite the fact that we see what liars politicians are, these are the people that are running government, despite the fact that we've seen the violent propensities of law enforcement all across the board, from your local police departments to your state police to your federal, like at every level of law enforcement, we see rampant corruption, violence, just all kinds of just rotten behavior. And there's been suggestions that there's a reason why we may even be, it may be overrepresented in law enforcement. Law enforcement is because of the psychology it takes to work there, to choose this job, of why people are choosing these jobs in order to have the authority over other people. But it's really, it's mind-boggling. It's like, but it's obvious that they're not even coming from a place of good faith, because they've like in that interview, I think that's one of the most important things about that interview, is that Toure blatantly lies and tells you, yeah, I'm lying. But I guess he it's like, and I think that's interesting. I think that's a really, so as much as I said I wanted them to face off, I think them not facing off was actually a good thing, because it gave him the space to feel comfortable enough to say that dumb shit. I'm glad he said it. I am so glad he said it though, because it's like, yes, that's where they're coming from. I'm going to lie about my position to make it seem as if I don't really want your guns, so that I can get, take an inch, so that you can give me an inch and I can take a mile. I'm going to lie and say, no, I just want to do this, and then go ahead and go the full way anyway. But like, my question is like, what do they have? What kind of answers do they have for the questions I've presented? I mean, we've already seen who's been targeted by gun control legislation. Who will be targeted with further gun control legislation? It's interesting. I think it's Danielle that mentions that we've seen that they don't want black people to have guns, and they're just trying to protect. It's like their entire objective is just to protect white people owning guns. And I'm like, okay, so if you pass this legislation, whose guns are they going to come after? Like it's the same racist motivation will be there. So that means they're going to disarm black people, and okay, we're not going to pay attention to white people's guns. That's still the, like, and then with cops, like, how can you trust these same police that are under fire for extrajudicial killings? How can you trust them? But they're the only ones that should have guns? And how will black people protect themselves? I mean, who do they turn to? And now puts black people at the mercy of these police departments who are extorting cities and states and localities, and saying, listen, we want this, we want more resources, we want carte blanche, we want qualified immunity, we don't want to be held accountable for anything, or else we're not going to do our jobs. We're going to slow down and just let people be victimized. This is what's happening. And your logic is, hey, yeah, let's disarm black people and further empower corrupt, law enforcement departments. This makes no sense. I'm so glad this conversation happened, though. And be sure to please click on the link. It's in the description. Watch the interview for yourself. Comment. And hey, if you disagree, if you think there's something I should have discussed, put it in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you disagree with me, give me a thumbs down. But like I always say, if you give me a thumbs down, if you dislike this content, tell me why. Don't just put the thumbs down and run away. I want to hear why. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.